Hello, YouTube. Welcome to the Stratosphere Lounge. I'm your host, Bill Whittle, surrounded by my playground friends, as I mentioned here just a second ago on Twitch. Yes, that means we're getting closer to getting these store mechanic shows off the road, which is kind of cool. And we got ourselves our Mike Rowe, our Mike Rowe. We got our Gorn Captain. We got our James C. Kirk, Starship Enterprise, and we've got our Johnny Voight back there. So we're looking good. Did I get a suntan? I got a bit of a tan, actually. I was outside working on my car, as real men are prone to do, as you probably know by now. Yeah, I was out there working on my car, getting those new headlights in, and dealing with Chinese manufactured products. The lights look great. They act great. But the instruction manual consists of 2 pages of badly printed. By the way, I know this sounds like a Jerry Seinfeld routine. Have you ever noticed that like every single instruction manual that comes from China is printed in the same font, that same ugly font? It's translated by somebody who took an English class once when they were in high school. The printing is terrible, and I'd had the lights in and installed. They looked bitchin', I might say. They looked bitchin'. But the daylight running lights, which come on underneath there, had to be hooked up to the... thank you, Velvet Jazz, over on YouTube. That's very kind of you. They have to be hooked up to the fuse box, and my fuse box looks nothing like the picture of the fuse box that they sent me. So despite the fact that I was out there working, I've got to take it into professionals who will do the job, get those running lights up, and then we'll see where the rest of it goes. So that's that. I hope everybody else is doing well. English always skips a word. I don't know what that means. But anyway, we got, like I say, got a whole family here, and we're gonna be filling up that area over there with more and more of these things. We got a Gary Sinise thing on its way, and we'll have Adam Baldwin and all the rest of these groovy guys. So that'll be cool. And let's see. I'm just trying to think here if there's anything that I have to really roll up on earlier today on. Let me get my cogitation spectacles on here because I can't see everything. It's a little tiresome, to be honest with you. Let's see what we got here. Is that a new do? It's not a new do. It's just the same. Well, it's the same hair and the same hairstylist, just a little, a little closer on the sides there. Just stapled on, and it holds up pretty well. So, Donald Mac. Oh, sorry, Donald Mac. I'm going to get this right, so help me God. Donald Mac Marchitag. I'm going with Donald Mac Marchitag. Something. I need Mike Rowe to help me get a job. I was laid off in May. 587 applications later, still no job. Help me. Stay positive here, Bill. Please stay positive there, Donald. How can somebody turn down a job application with a name like that? That's absolutely amazing. Some people have been making kind of comments about the history series I did. The series of history series I did called What We Saw over for Daily Wire, and we did An Empire of Terror last, which was set in Russia, and I have been pushing hard for the next one. I've pitched it. They've said they've approved it. I want to do the next one. I want to do is the Navy in the Pacific. So I want to just call it the Navy, to be honest with you. But it would be pretty much exclusively about the Pacific War. Although I might do it in a way that, if you look at the total history of the U.S. Navy, you could probably write pretty much everything prior to World War II in one chapter, and then everything after in another, because of the amount of history that got consumed between 42 and 45. And having just read Ian Tolmes history, three-part history of the Pacific War, you're just overwhelmed by how desperate things are in the beginning in 42, and then in 43 essentially nothing happens. In 44 the country really starts to break into a run, and by the time you're at 45, this boiler has created such a superabundance of everything. Are you ready for this? I'm virtually positive I have the statistic right. By the time you get into April of 1945, do you know how many movie screens there were showing in Guam on any given night? Guam had been taken considerably earlier the previous year. You know how many movie theaters were showing movies? How many movie screens there were in Guam in January of 1945 for servicemen that had been rotated back or about to be rotated forward? 400. 400 movie theaters on Guam, and showing movies round the clock, 24 hours a day. It's incredible what this country was able to do industrial and economically. It just defies description. So that aspect of the war is just overwhelming to me, and there was one aspect of the Pacific War that I was not aware of, having read this excellent trilogy, and that was what had happened to Manila. That was something I did not know about, because I'd always, Philippines for me were Battle Leyte Gulf, and that's, Taffy 3, and that's going to be the high point of the series. But what the Japanese did in Manila is beyond belief, just beyond belief. It's crazy. It's crazy. What a stupid word to use. Beyond imagination, what happened to the Filipino people, what the Japanese did to the Filipino people in the Philippines during the Battle of Manila. David Booty says worse than Nanking. It seems worse than Nanking. The numbers weren't as large because Nanking was just a more populated city, but yes, it was worse than Nanking. It was. I'd never known about it. I always just thought after Leyte Gulf, the Philippines, they just more or less evacuated or outflanked, but they went on a rampage of destruction for 5 weeks. I'll just come right out and say it. That fully justified the atomic bombings of Japan. I mean, fully. What was done there is beyond imagination. And I'd never heard of this. And the only way to get to the Japanese, it was street-to-street fighting. It was the biggest urban warfare battle in the Pacific by far. And the only way to get them out of these fortified places, which were in many cases actual castles, genuine castles, was to shell them. And so Manila, prior to World War II, was the pearl of the Orient and was filled with these classical, Spanish architecture and these elegant buildings, and these beautiful stone structures, and all of this, just intricate stonework and architecture, and we had to flatten every single stone of it. Just had to flatten it, because, my goodness, it was really horrible. Velvet Jazz over in YouTube says Empire of Terror almost gave me PTSD. It almost gave me PTSD too, although I refuse to use that term on myself, reserving it for the people that deserve it. So visually evocative. I shared with my friends and said that what we're heading for, unless America turns around, every school should show it. Thank you. I think they should too. I really think that they should, because see, the real danger with totalitarian regimes like the Soviets or the Nazis is they don't come to power saying, "Hey, we're going to take over and then we're going to kill all of you." What they do is they tell you what they want. They tell you what they know you want to hear, and then people vote for it and go along with it. And then once they're in, well, that's what they say about socialism, vote your way in, shoot your way out. So we'll see. Eric Blake with a comment here says, hey, which we always pay very special attention to. Very special attention to, I'll have you know. Hey, Bill, here's a trivia note about the Yamato you may not know. Way back in the 19th century, the Japanese felt emasculated when the U.S. Navy showed up with the biggest frigate ships they've ever seen. So they built the Yamato basically out of psychological revenge. Hey, we're the big boys now. Well, that's one explanation, which is, I don't think is really probably the most factually accurate explanation, Eric. Not that there wasn't a lot of we're the big boys now. Anyway, now Yamato, they built 3 super battleships. Yamato, Musashi, and I can never get the name of the other one. I want to say Shikaku. Hang on. Shinano. Yes, Shinano. No one's ever heard of Shinano because the Shinano was, by the time they were building the 3rd of these super battleships, Shinano, they'd lost Midway and they needed carriers, so they turned Shinano into a super carrier, rushed it into production to get it out there, sailed it from the shipyards just down the coast, just down the coast of Japan to where it was going to be fitted out, pick up its air crew. And it ran into a United States Navy submarine who put 4 torpedoes into her. And since the hull had been fitted out so quickly, they hadn't had a lot of their airtight, the watertight doors in place. So this U.S. Gato, fleet boat, I don't know if it was Gato class or later, but this U.S. diesel electric submarine sank the largest aircraft carrier in World War II. It's the largest ship ever to be sunk by a submarine, ever. And it never saw service. None of the 3 battleships saw service. Musashi was sunk on the way to the Battle of Leyte Gulf. It never fired on another ship at all. Yamato put some rounds downrange. It is possible, in fact, it's likely that Yamato helped to sink, didn't do it by itself, but helped to sink, was it Gambier Bay at Battle of Taffy 3? Yamato may also almost certainly have put some rounds into USS Johnson, but aside from sinking a jeep carrier and a destroyer, the super battleship, which they'd taken so many of their resources into, did nothing. And so all 3 of these things sucked up all of their budget, all of their money, all of their steel, all of their resources, and not one of them did anything of any note whatsoever. I read in this book that if they'd taken the resources they'd spent on those 3 hulls, they could have produced 4,000 airmen in brand new successor to the Zero, which was the I don't remember the name of it, but it was a much better airplane than the Zero. 4,000 airmen. And God knows how many tankers and freighters, but nope. They went for the big super pieces. Totalitarian regimes like this kind of thing. Hitler built the biggest gun, the biggest submarine. They just love this gigantism, and they Eric says they were a measuring contest with the United States. That's not what it was. That's not it. You don't spend those kind of resources for that. They did it because they were, despite the fact that they'd achieved such an amazing victory at Pearl Harbor, they did it because they were absolutely taken with the American strategist who had such an influence on world history, Mahan. Mahan said basically that all of the naval battles, that you have to control the Navy if you're going to control an empire or control the world. And naval battles are always going to come down to one climactic, decisive battle. The Japanese built those 3 battleships to win the decisive battle at sea. One decisive battle. That's what they were convinced they were going to face. And they wanted to do them and blow them out of the water before they could get into range, which is what they were designed and built to do. They were obsolete before they were laid down, and they were called, during the war, they called them the Hotel Yamato and the Hotel Musashi, because they sat in the inland sea or at Truk and did nothing. They just sat there for the whole war. Bill, regarding that thought, what could Germany have done with the resources used for the Atlantic Wall? Well, they probably could have held the Russians off for another week. But no, the entire purpose of them was to outrange the enemy. They had to be that big in order to carry the guns. Biggest naval guns afloat until that point, virtually positive, were 16-inch cannons. Yamato had 18 plus, 18.2 or something like that inch cannons. They had an effective or maximum range of 26 miles, and they were fast. They were much faster than our battleships. So the idea behind those three battleships was not to show everybody just, it wasn't just a weenie waving contest. It was designed to be able to win the decisive battle. And this is what plagued the Japanese for the whole war. They never went out there to win a battle or to attrit the Americans. They just, every single time they sailed, they had these incredibly intricate plans where all these fleets had to move together and everything had to mesh just exactly right. And they basically went out there and tried to get the decisive, win against the U.S. Navy in Battle of the Philippine Sea, or depending on how you, not the Battle of the Philippine Sea. What became known as the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. They went out for that. They went out for Leyte Gulf. And by the time Leyte Gulf was over, they had essentially nothing left. They made one more sortie with Yamato and a couple of destroyers during the Battle of Okinawa, and that was a banzai charge by a battleship. They didn't have the fuel to come back. They never expected to come back. Thank you very much for the super chat there. I'm sorry, when it's high contrast or low contrast, I have it wrong. Epic Guess, thank you, Epic Guess, I appreciate it. Yeah, they put all their eggs in three baskets, exactly. But this whole story is just incredibly fascinating, and it's tempting to not tell the story. Look, you can't tell the story of the Pacific War without talking about the Marines. But the Marine, and I'm not saying the Marines get all the credit, because God knows they've earned the credit they got for that war. But there were 1,500 Marines killed in the Battle of Guadalcanal, and something like 4,000 sailors. Nobody talks about that, and people should be talking about that. So anyway, I've pitched it to them. They said they like it. I'm waiting for approval. I'm waiting to get started on it, and I'm ringing that bell as fast as I can. So it'd be nice to move ahead with that. Yeah, Roadrunner says the Marines didn't march to Guadalcanal. They did not. When they hoisted the flag over Mount Suribachi on Iwo Jima, which happened on day 2 or 3 of the invasion, and since it was, this pretty tiny little mountain when you get right down to it, but the rest of Iwo Jima is essentially completely flat. So once they saw the American flag up there on day 2 or 3, I forget which, day 3, thanks. Once they raised the flag, everybody cheered, and Secretary of the Navy James Forrestal, or Assistant Secretary of the Navy, I don't know which he was at that point. Anyway, James Forrestal was there, and he turned to, I think it was Chesty Puller, who was in charge of the Marines on the island, and said, "This guarantees the Marine Corps for another 500 years." Turns out that that was a false, I won't say it was a false celebration, but everybody cheered, like, "Oh, look, we just raised the flag over the mountain." That happened on day 3. The battle lasted for, almost 2 months. The statistic that bears mentioning is that for every Marine that was killed on leading up to the capture of the top of Mount Suribachi, for every Marine that died during those first 3 days, 20 would die before the campaign on Iwo was over, because all the fighting was done after that. All the hard fighting was on the north end of the island. It was horrible. Hey, look at this. These super chats just keep on coming in. LAVCO 92, they use a unique airframe prototype in Godzilla -1, Kyushi J7W Shinden. Really cool plane, but I know you don't watch movies, LOL. Thank you. I think the Shinden is the one I'm talking about. They held on to the Zero way too long. Germans did the same thing with the Me-109, which were extraordinary airplanes at the beginning of the war, but rapidly obsolete. And then, let's see, I might as well just leave these glasses on, honestly. R. Valera says, would the U.S. have gone to war with Japan if there had been no Pearl Harbor? I think eventually, yes. I mean, it's an interesting question. It's an interesting question to ask whether we would have declared war on Germany if Germany hadn't declared war on us first. Hitler did us a real big favor by doing that. But, you know, it's impossible to imagine. It's just impossible to imagine that war could not have gone any way other than, let me just brighten things up a little bit here, that war could have gone anything other than the way it went, which is all of the 5 principles full out on the table, you know, going at it as hard as they could. And, you know, when you have a war where countries like Italy and France and China are minor players who had no real appreciable outcome on the war, when you have countries of that size and magnitude and sophistication essentially being sidelined, you got the big one. But it's the industrialization. It's what America was able to produce that is just staggering about the war in the Pacific. Staggering. 30 aircraft carriers in Tokyo Bay, or just outside. 30. And for the first part of, well, I guess it was the first part of 43, it was the Empire of Japan versus the USS Enterprise, and it just, next thing you know, we've got so many airplanes that if they were not exaggerating, if it turned out they had like a shut off control cable or something, just dump it overboard. We had so many new airplanes arriving and no place to put them. So actually amazing story, and I'm really looking forward to doing that. I believe I just like the sound of the Navy, and I'd like this one to have a lot more visuals. One of the things that I've never seen done with the Navy or any telling of the Pacific story is people getting familiar with the ships, which seems kind of strange if you think about it, you know? I mean, you say, okay, so we had Kido Butai consisted of 8 aircraft carriers. That was the Japanese mobile force, and they used 6 of the 8 for the attack on Pearl Harbor. Okay, so there were 6 carriers. What did they look like? How big were they? How big were they compared to a modern aircraft carrier? How big were they compared to American aircraft carriers? You know, we lost Saratoga, we lost the Lexington, we lost the Hornet, and then all of a sudden the next 3 Essex carriers off the line were renamed Lexington, Saratoga, and Hornet. What did they look like compared to? It's the Morlocks. That's what it is. Morlocks. They're coming to take me away. Ha ha. Hee hee ho ho. To the funny farm, where life is beautiful all the time. And so I'd really just want people to see them. I want them to know what a destroyer. I hope I'm not disturbing you over there with my podcast. Yeah. You know, it's in the pipeline. I'm waiting for the guy who I've been dealing with has approved it. The guy who I think is the new guy at Daily Wire for nonfiction has heard the pitch and approved it, and I'm just waiting for the go ahead. And it's And this one I'm going to crank out fast because I've already done the outline on it. I just want to get it going and want to get it done. Need to do one of those a year, I think. So we'll see. I'll be happy to see those nice young men with their clean white coats, yes. Because they're coming to take me away, ha. They're coming to take me away, ho ho hee, ha to the funny farm. Anyway, all right. You know what? I'm going to leap into the questions. You know why? Because I've got to, Mister. So let's see what's happening in the world of our questionnaire, question thing. So I'm no Eloy. No, I'm not. I'm the guy I'm the Victorian guy. I'm the guy saying, "What's the matter with you people? What's wrong with you people? How can you let her drown like that? What have you become?" Well, they've become Harris voters is what they've become. Let's move this over here where I can keep an eye on it. I'm not going to enjoy this banging too much, to be perfectly honest with you. Best part about doing about the Navy thing. Like I said, I think I could do an episode. So what I'd like to do is, I'd like to do some of the segments from actual vessels. In other words, I mean, a lot of those vessels are at the bottom of the ocean, but we have a couple of Fletcher-class destroyers that are museum ships. When we talk about Taffy 3 and stuff, I'd like to just do a couple of lines from this is the bridge of a Fletcher-class destroyer. This is how big it was. Here's the guns. We've got the Midway. We've got the Iowa here in Los Angeles. That thing is. We can talk about the big guns, but what I really would like to do is do maybe one episode prior to, the history of the Navy up until the guns, up until Pearl Harbor, and then another one from the atom bombs until the present day, because I really, really, really want to get on an aircraft carrier. Maybe that'd be the way to write it, is just to get out there and get on that. I gotta get on a carrier. I just have to get on a carrier. I turned down a chance to get on a carrier to pick up Natasha at the airport back when we were newlyweds. Greater love hath no man. The Yorktown, is it Patriots Point in Charleston? Yeah, all these cool museum ships. It'd be nice to see them again. It'd be nice to. There's a couple of Gatto boats that are out there as well. It'd be fun to shoot some stuff in there, Not recreations or anything. It'd just be fun to deliver some lines walking down, the inside of all that stuff. Yeah, Intrepids in New York. Most of those guys, in fact, I'm sure all of the museum carriers have had the conversion. We don't have any straight deck carriers left, I don't think, right? They all underwent the slant deck conversions back probably in the 50s or 60s, and then those ships were retired. I don't think we've got a straight deck carrier left. There's USS Texas is a friend of mine. My friend Phil's been there, and be fun to shoot some stuff in the Texas because I believe that's very similar to the Arizona, and those little details I can sort of bore in, get a little more detail on. Okay, moving on here. Let's see what we got. Find ourselves some questions here. It's a Friday night. I was looking at the numbers. It's like, oh, well, it's a little slow, but it's a Friday night. We're competing against other Websters, so that's kind of cool. Yeah, it's a shame that the Enterprise was scrapped. In fact, it's a crime actually that it's a genuine crime that they scrapped the Enterprise. It really is. It's just a crime. Well, maybe you shaved with the Enterprise. They turn it into razor blades, something like that. All right, here we go. Members, forum. Can we talk about the election, please? It's heavy on everybody's minds. I'm not optimistic at all, says JR. We can certainly talk about the election. Let's see what the questions are, and we'll take it from there. This has been... oh, God. That's not me, by the way. I did not just have a burrito. that is people working on the ladies' restroom, and honestly, this is gonna be a bit of a problem. Road Rider. Okay, here's Road Rider. Bill, since I missed most of Monday's show, not sure if today was certain the Stratosphere Lounge. I mean, not just if the sun was going to rise this morning, although we're getting to that point. I'm not going to be able to talk over this. I'm just not. I'm feeling Cloward Pivened. Cloward Pivened. For those of you not familiar, the Cloward Piven strategy was a Marxist theory by two Marxist American professors named Cloward and Piven, and the idea was that the way to destroy America is to destroy the American government anyway, is to overload the system, make everybody dependent on welfare, make everybody dependent on the police, make everybody dependent on emergency rooms for the healthcare, overload everything, I don't know what it sounds like to you guys, but it's not like a distant noise here. It's like they're doing something on the other end of this wall. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to get through these tonight. Guys, I'm sorry about that. No, I just can't do it. It's a butt trumpet. Gang, I don't know what to say. I don't even know if I'm going to. I don't even think I'm going to save this one as a number. I'm going to just say that this was because I can't talk over this. I can't think over this. I'm not even going to call this a stratosphere. It is like Close Encounters in here right now. It's exactly like It's exactly like Close Encounters. The Stratosphere Lounge is right. Help me, John. Some things are beyond our control, and this is one of them. Gang, I'm sorry, we're gonna have to call this one. We had electrical problems in the building last night. Maybe that's what they're working on. But it's just like. This reminds me of the campfire scene in Blazing Saddles. Wow. Okay. Well, yeah. Okay. No. I know you can hear me fine. I can't. I actually can't think. It's crazy loud in here. Yeah, Roadrunner. I'm going to go with that. The universe is telling me to go home to Natasha and just call it a night. So I think that's what I'm going to do. Sorry about this, folks. I'm not even going to count this one. This one's just going to be sort of an off-the-record kind of a hey, how's it going kind of thing. And I apologize about not talking about the election. Be of good cheer. Don't be worried. It's mass delusions and the popular mass delusions and the madness of crowds and just remember despair is their objective, and once you remember that despair is their objective, then don't fall into their trap. We're going to be fine. Okay? All right, so I'm going to have to close this one out. I'm going to say goodnight to our YouTube friends. Sorry about this, YouTube, but it's beyond my control, so we will see you on Monday night here at the Stratosphere Studio.